the Radio Today podcast with Jen Sederhelm.
Hi and welcome. This episode, it's a deep dive into GfK Radio 360 Survey 3, where KIIS Sydney saw the full impact of the departure of Kyle and Jackie O. But in a brighter note for Ahern, Jonesy and Amanda leapt top on drive. Steve Ahern chats with Ahern, Ace and Nine, who had a stellar result in Melbourne. But before I start with what was also a generally great survey for SCA, they started the day with the announcement of some 300 job cuts for the newly merged organisation. When SCA and Seven West Media joined forces earlier this year, it was speculated that job cuts may be to come, but time progressed and just as many were thinking of exhaling, the organisation posted a cost reduction trading update on the eve of Survey 3. Ahead of an all-staff town hall meeting, which explains why we don't have anyone from SCA to chat about their largely positive Survey 3 results, the ASX announcement stated that between 250 and 300 jobs are expected to go before end of financial year June 30. New CEO Rowan Lund said, "This involves making incredibly tough choices regarding our team structures, and we will be saying goodbye to many smart, talented and hardworking colleagues who have played a vital role in building both businesses. We are a better company because of their dedication, and we are committed to treating every departing team member with the respect and compassion they deserve." SCA had a positive Survey 3. They were top in Brisbane and Adelaide, and Mix 94.5 narrowed the gap significantly on Nova in Perth. Fifi, Fev and Nick at the Fox FM are the third most listened to station and breakfast show in Australia. But Today FM Sydney, in the survey where they should be picking up former KIIS listeners, did not. However, Triple M Sydney and Melbourne fared well too and are gradually becoming forces again in those cities. What garnered the most attention Survey 3 was the massive loss of audience suffered by KIIS 106.5 in Sydney. In the first full survey without Kyle and Jackie O, the station dropped down below KIIS 101.1 in Melbourne in terms of listeners, and 106.5 Breakfast lost 130,000 cum audience, which, to put it in perspective, is the same that listens to Kathy Jubb on 2UE, and Kathy had a good survey, more from John Vertigan from the ACE network shortly. KIIS dropped from number 1 FM in Breakfast to now be behind Ben Fordham at 2GB, Bogart Torelli on Smooth, and Ricky Lee and Tim at Nova. I don't imagine that ARM will continue to let it free fall while it sorts out court matters with Kyle and Jackie, but this is significant. There were real positives for ARN too. Christian O'Connell regained ground in Sydney, but lost a little in Melbourne. Ben and Liam had a cracking debut on KIIS 102.3 Adelaide, but the best result for the network was Jonesy and Amanda taking number 1 spot on Gold Drive. Their 3.3% increase in Sydney took them past Nova and Smooth, with both those stations also seeing gains, by the way. Their audience has followed them, not to a different network, but a new time slot. I wonder who else is looking at that. Steve Ahern talked with ARN Chief Content Officer Kelly Elstub and Dave Cameron, Director of Content Metro Radio, about the ARN mixed bag.
Well, I will jump in first. I would say, dare I use the phrase, it's been a bit of a gold rush for us today.
You had to use that phrase. Well done.
So thrilled for Amanda and Jonesy and for Christian. When you are talking about a radio pair who've been together for 20 plus years to deliver their biggest audience share ever in their Sydney Drive show, I'm beyond thrilled for them. Their share increase, the work they're doing together to be number 1 in Drive across everything, Sydney and Melbourne. I couldn't be happier for them and their team. They have an incredible team behind the scenes. They are such talented broadcasters. I am beyond thrilled for them. I'm so happy for Christian and his team too to see already so soon in Survey 3, Sydney understanding and connecting with him and his unique show it's thrilling is the word I can use. It's so heartening and thrilling. And KIIS, and I know Dave will elaborate on this, it's exactly where we thought we would be. You know, we were just saying earlier to each other, if you were to buy a lottery ticket using those numbers, it's the numbers we would have put in.
My thoughts is exactly the same as Kerry's. It's a day of celebration today with some great numbers from legacy shows, some really exciting numbers and building momentum with new shows. Christian Sydney, Ben and Liam in Adelaide, and other little glimmers of gold around the network, and unsurprising results for KIIS, as Kerry said, exactly what we thought it would be. Actually, probably a little bit higher than where we thought we might be. So it's a really great platform of having a 8 share in breakfast to be able to grow from that. That's actually a really great position for us to be in.
First of all, Jonesy and Amanda, you're right. A great result for them in Sydney and Melbourne. Just refresh me, are they also heard in all the other 3 capital city markets and also in your regional markets?
Yeah, a combination of FM and DAB, and then we have some best of Jonesy and Amanda's go out around the country as well. As a live drive show, it's heard across Metro with a combination of FM and DAB, Steve.
Well, let's talk about KIIS. Now, very generous of you to contribute ratings to just about every other breakfast show in the Sydney market from KIIS, except for Today, which went down. Do you think you'll ever get it back? So you said it was a good number, 8. Yes, it is. But it's in decline, particularly in the KIIS breakfast show time slot. So will it come back, and in what time scale?
Look, we are focusing on the long game here. As we kind of said off the top, this is where we expected to land. And I think to be meddling in that kind of area, to have been able to maintain so much of our core audience, 70-odd% of the audience that were there, I think that's pretty incredible, given everything we've thrown at this morning team. We're settling into much more of a rhythm now. The ratings are where we think they are going to be and where they'll probably stay for a bit. Melbourne's pretty flat. Of course, Sydney's come off. But yes, in short, they will return. Our plans for next year that we cannot tell you about are really exciting, and we 100% know that the ratings are going to return for KIIS Breakfast.
Yeah.
And Steve, you could have asked the same question last survey too around Christian in Sydney. Will they ever return? And I think today will show you that you get a great show that can engage in a city really quickly. That's what happens. Christian is the epitome of getting a show right in a market and just letting it build its own momentum. So that's your answer around what will happen with KIIS.
And certainly that shows in Gold Breakfast in the Sydney market, both Cume and Share are up for Christian. So, all credit to him.
Look, unless you can show me where any stations have had a huge tsunami of Cume growth in Sydney, I can't see it, So from what we can see, they haven't had a dramatic shift anywhere. We might have lost some through some core fans of the previous show being lost to radio overall, but I cannot see that they have shifted across other stations in a major way, unless you can see that. I can't.
Well, what I can see in looking at the Cumes is in Sydney, we're talking about overall 20,000 listeners less are listening to the radio in Sydney, but KIIS Breakfast lost 132,000. So
naturally, and that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. But to answer that point, that 132,000 didn't just go away from radio, so they must have spread out across the other breakfast shows. I can't believe they went to 2U either.
So I mean, what I can show you is Smooth went down in Cume in breakfast, Nova went down in Cume in breakfast, Triple M went down in Cume in breakfast. Today FM went down in Cume in breakfast. So I guess what I'm saying to you is there's not a tsunami of this audience that have gone to other stations. It just hasn't happened.
So do you reckon it might then be some have turned off? They're just pissed off that they haven't got their favourite Kyle and Jackie and they don't want anything else. But maybe others are still around, but they're listening less. So TSL is down.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happened. Yeah. In fact, the only show really that's had great Q growth in Sydney has been Christian.
Of course, as you said, you're not going to tell me your plans for next year. Fair enough. But I want to talk about the show that's on the radio now that's been the subject of these ratings. So there's Mikey and the team that was with Kyle and Jackie O. Pete's gone over to gold, but there's Nat and some. Yes, that's right. And some of the other team. They are, of course, working to retain some of the elements of Kyle and Jackie's show and do things differently. So how do you think they're succeeding?
I think they're doing a pretty darn good job. We know Survey 2 still included some of the time that their former show was on air. So for them to be an 8 share, and if you really think about everything we've thrown at them, we've given them different co-hosts, different challenges, every other week has been something different that team has had to rise to. I'm really impressed with what they're doing. You'll see us settling into a bit more of a regular rhythm and regular pattern now. What you have read and seen online and in the papers about us auditioning a whole bunch of people simply is not true. We have some great talent on our books, and we have been giving them a platform, allowing them to have a great time on this show. But no, look, I think their audience retention is incredible. I think the work they're doing is great. Dave and I and DB are really happy with where the show is at this stage.
Dave, Abby Chatfield and Bianca Dye were two strong females who've been on Bianca 1 week, Abby a couple of weeks. I think Abby has a huge presence, a huge microphone presence, and I think Bianca brings energy and laughter to it. So you auditioned two really quite well-known female people there. What were your thoughts about how they went in those few weeks?
I thought they were amazing. I thought every co-host we have had on has been amazing. As Kerry said, our strategy here is familiarity plus curiosity. We're giving familiar elements of the show through the benchmarks that have existed in the past, pop quizzes, celebrity gossip, all of those expectations that an audience comes in to hear of the show. And then the curiosity part comes from hearing some really interesting opinions and voices from a rotating co-host element that we've had in the show. So that familiarity and curiosity is giving us the opportunity to sustain the audience at 80+% today. That's just such great grounds for what we launch into next.
Well, look, we've focused on Sydney and Melbourne, as of course we should, because they're the biggest markets and that's where all this is happening. But let's just spend a couple of minutes on the other markets. In Brisbane, KIIS went down there. What are your thoughts on the shifts on KIIS 973?
A little bit bumpy today. To be honest, it's within the band of where 97.3 sits, in between that sort of high 9s to mid 11s. So it's still within that band. I think the other thing you to remember about survey results too, Steve, is that they don't really reflect the last 6 weeks of content. They reflect the last 6 months of audience sentiment. Survey results reflect a growing trend in audience sentiment over a far longer period of time.
In Adelaide, you've got, as we talked about before, you've got the Gold Adelaide and you've got the Heritage brand on AM Cruise, and KIIS 102.3 is growing in the Adelaide market.
Yeah, KIIS is the real story for Adelaide for us at this stage. I mean, this is the first full survey for Ben and Liam. I think they were only in 4 days of the last survey. So this is an incredible result for them to be a 10.5 share as audiences are reconnecting with them, for KIIS to now be, up 1 spot, doing that 11% share, 11.2%. This is really, really pleasing. And this is just the start of Ben and Liam, who are really doing some fun, original radio. I know you're probably a fan of the Secret Stain that they're doing there, which is hilarious visual radio. The guys are doing such great stuff there, and this is their first full book, so it's really exciting to see where KIIS and Ben and Liam are going to be taking the station.
Yeah, they did very well. An increase in the breakfast time slot of 1.5 share, and leading to increases right across the day. So yes.
Yeah.
And lastly, in Perth, you've got gold there, which was up slightly, and you've got DABs. I notice you don't have CADA in Perth on DAB.
Oh, I wanted to give a CADA shout out if I can, just briefly. Best ever breakfast results for CADA, and Jake Powell, who's not only the music director and content director but announcer. Best results since 2017. He deserves a massive shout out for the work he does on CADA. But sorry, I interrupted. Back to Perth.
Yeah, Perth.
Yeah, I mean, just something to for all of us to remember again, Steve, is that it's had a rebrand there. 96 FM is a legacy brand over 30 years in Perth. We still need to just look a bit of attribution back to that brand, whether we're getting the actual attribution in that market that we deserve at the moment. But it's always been such a great, solid music format there. You can see the workday figures super strong there. We'll work with Breakfast. That's a brand new breakfast show there with Lisa and Russell. We have got a little bit of work to do to start to build some momentum in the market for that new show. But all in all, it's a good, solid result for a brand new brand in Perth.
For the ACE Radio Network, it was a pretty good day at the office. Both their Melbourne stations were up. 2UE was up 1.5% in Sydney, which I'll add was the largest overall increase for any station this survey. And 4BH was up 0.9% in Brisbane to hold third place, with Barbecue Bob also up to an 11.1 audience share. Metro Content Director John Vertigan had this to say.
Pleasing results for us at ACE today. A clear standout for us is a major network milestone that we've been aiming for, and that is our combined ACE Metro QM has climbed past 1 million people for the very first time across the 4 stations. So that was a nice tick for us. In Brisbane, well, 4BH continues to make us happy. Number 2, 10 plus. Number 1, 25 plus. Breakfast is a nice lift for Barbecue Bob. TSL up. So that was our best result under ACE control at 4BH today. So very happy there. Sydney, good book for 2UE, up to 4.2 share. Nice QM lift. TSL on the up. And Kathy, nice rise in breakfast as well. In Melbourne, Magic had a good one. 62,000 new listeners. 3MP continued to lift as well, adding 18,000 listeners and some nice results on the weekends as well. So I guess it shows us that our formats are still relevant and resilient, and our audiences are loyal and listening for longer. So that's what we want to do and continue to grow that into Survey 4.
SEN was another network that rarely gets a look in, but saw the benefits of the NRL and AFL seasons, particularly in Melbourne, where SEN 1116 was the most improved station and breakfast show in the city. 40,000 extra listeners to Kane and Kingy and Gary and Tim on breakfast, with exclusive Soccer World Cup rights to come. Nova had the best day of all the networks, really. Smooth Sydney was top station and most listened to in the QM audience share. In Melbourne, Nova 100 and Jace, Lauren and Clint were the same. Nova was top in Perth, as they have been for 50-odd surveys now, and they saw a return to form in Brisbane. 5AA was most improved in Adelaide, and Jody and Hazy on Nova moved to second behind Triple M. Smooth DAB Plus stations were top in Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth. Smooth Melbourne saw a return to form, and Nova 969 gained ground too. No notes. For Tapt Media, their first survey under the Laundy family, 2GB lost across the day and weekends to lose top station to Smooth, but with Ben Fordham still clear number 1 in breakfast. It wasn't a particularly good result for 6PR Perth or 4BC Brisbane either. But 3AW shone. Melbourne's a tough audience, but Ross and Russ keep doing their thing and increase their breakfast share to 19.1%. Next best in breakfast is Christian O'Connell's 10%. Even better is Dennis Walters at nights on 3AW with 19.5%. Steve spoke with Tapt Media National Content Manager Greg Burns.
Survey 3 2026, what's your overall view of it?
Steve, a great opening survey for what is the new Tapt Media. Across our radio network, number one breakfast shows in Sydney and in Melbourne, number one for streaming, clear number one for streaming. 3AW, number one across the board in Melbourne, clear, dominant number one. National QM is up on last survey. A national QM is up year on year. Ross and Russ overall, they're now nudging a 20 share, which is extraordinary in a very competitive market in Melbourne. Ben Fordham is the clear number one in Sydney with a 15.6. Congratulations to Ben. Worth noting that it's 2GB's best QM result in almost 4 years in Sydney. 4BC, QM down a little, but the new Sophie and Dean breakfast show is steady. 6PR in Perth, QM is up. Breakfast with Millsy and Cull still in the top three. So overall, Steve, a really good day for our brand of talk radio and a really good day for the new Tapt Media.
Yes, and congratulations on the first Tapt survey and also on some pretty impressive wins in the Australian Audio Awards recently.
Yes, a cross-section of awards, I'm pleased to say. I'm particularly proud of the win in the Best Specialist program, which incorporated the breaking news of Bondi, a terrible evening in Sydney back in December, but the radio station 2GB stood up. And that recognition was, I think, well-deserved and a wonderful recognition for the teams.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's just focus on 2GB. As you said, QMs are up, but share is down quite significantly. I note too that the station that you lease out to ACE Radio, 2UE, went up by roughly the same 1.5 share. I'm sure it's not a direct movement of audience between one and the other, but just an interesting little side note.
Yeah, and congratulations to UE. I obviously had a very lengthy career there some decades ago, so always good to see 2UE doing well. Steve, I don't think our audience is gone to 2UE. I think that's more of an example of the upheaval in the market at the present time. In relation to 2GB, as I say, that QM has held. Ben's QM last survey in breakfast was at a 4-year high, which was over 500,000, and he's effectively held that today. It is down a little. Across the board, time spent listening is down, and I think that's probably had an overall effect on the share. But, mornings still doing 13s. Ben's up over 15. Afternoons, 10 plus. Drive with Clinton, holding. Overall, it's been a really strong result for 2GB today in a very tough market.
To wrap up Survey 3, KIIS was top DAB Plus station in Sydney with what must be about the biggest QM audience the station has had there and impressive weekend listening. For commercial stations, the drops for KIIS 106.5, Today FM, most Triple J stations and Gold 104.3 in Melbourne were the most pronounced and will be the ones most will be watching Survey 4 unless changes are made. They are at Triple J already with Abby and Tyrone shifting from drive to breakfast. It was interesting to see that KIIS 101.1 Melbourne increased its QM audience by 60,000, which does tend to say that listeners like the music. They just didn't want Kyle and Jackie O. Survey 4 is only a month away, out on Tuesday, July 14. Let's wrap up with some music and RCS Media Monitor's National Radio Airplay Chart Song of the Week. If you haven't seen Off Campus yet, I'm going to openly confess that I've already watched it twice, and it's the best thing I've seen in ages. Soundtrack is spectacular and features not just Australian acting talent in Josh Houston, but some great Australian music, which appears to initially have come as a surprise to the artists. One of which is G-Flip with their Bed on Fire, released September last year, but its use in a hot as anything moment in the series has seen lots of us seeking the song out. It debuts on the Aircheck charts this week at number 24 with more than 300 spins on Australian radio. highly recommend. And that's it for today. I'll catch you next time.
Radio Today with Jen Sederhelm. Find more at radiotoday.com.au.
radiotoday.com.au